Hey guys, my name is Brian and welcome back to my channel. If this is the first time you're tuning into this, I'm working on my late brother's 1967 Pontiac Firebird. He had owned it for many years, since the 70s, and unfortunately due to health problems just didn't have a chance to finish it up. So back in September of 2020, I went back to Oklahoma and picked it up and brought it out here to Arizona, and I've been slowly, meticulously trying to put this thing back together. So I've decided to do a complete full restoration on it. As you can see, we have already torn down most of the front end. Today's the day that we are going to pull the motor out of the Firebird and start the preparation for pulling the frame and everything else. So if you're into classic cars, if you're into Firebirds and Camaros, or just like to see builds, do me a big favor, hit that subscribe button down below, give me a thumbs up, and let me know if you're working on a project similar to mine. Maybe we can work together on some content. So without further ado, let's get to pulling this motor out and checking out what we have to do to get it out. Let's go. Well, as you guys know, I like using Coors boxes to make my lists on when I do things. So here is what I got to do to pull the motor out of the Firebird. We need to remove the torque converter bolts. There's 3 of them. Drain the oil and other fluids. Pull the vacuum lines from the transmission and the carb. We're going to need to remove the shift linkage, remove the drive line, remove the carb and install a lift plate, remove the fuel lines, remove the power steering lines and pump, remove the exhaust manifolds because the bolts on mine are a little too rusty, so I'm going to take them right from the motor, pull those off. Remove motor mounts, pull out that motor, and drink more beer. So with that, let's get into pulling it. Now, you don't have to follow all these steps except for maybe this one right here, like pull the motor out last. But this is the steps and I'm going to go through and see how far we can get on this today. All right, let's go. All right, guys, first things first, we got to jack up this car high enough to where we can get underneath it to disconnect the drive line and the back towards the differential, and then of course be able to pull it out, plus the other work that we need to do. So we'll go ahead and we'll get this jacked up. This is the first time I've taken out an American water-cooled engine before. In the last 20-some years, I have removed many a Porsche motors and can do it basically by myself in probably under 30 or 40 minutes. But tackling this American V8, this Firebird, has definitely been a challenge for me in my skill set of working on rear engine air-cooled motors in the past. I have to admit, one of the cool things about working on these cars is in a Porsche or a Volkswagen motor for the air-cooled rear-engine cars, the engines come up from the bottom, where American cars, obviously the engine comes out through the top. And having that brace there, that support bar, in order to jack up the front, to be able to put jack stands underneath instead of one side at a time, I can do the front, lift it up, 2 jack stands. Gotta like the idea of the American V8s when it comes to jacking them up and getting them situated. So we'll get some jack stands underneath this, and we'll move on to the next part. Gentlemen, soak your nuts. Make sure to soak your nuts well and plenty a few days beforehand. Luckily, I had a chance to do this before, and I'm just going back and hitting it one more time. All right, let's go ahead and drain off the oil. We'll get this oil plug out of the way. And come on, it's a little slippery, trust me. And the oil, when it comes out, it's going to be almost waxy, kind of, and a little bit of a smell of fuel. So obviously, we're still having some issues with the carburetor, and I believe those rings are just shot. That's one of the big reasons why this motor is coming out. So I can get it, at least rebuild it and see if there's any opportunities to make a few extra ponies, or if the cost is just better just to pop something else in there. I'm going to give that an idea too. So if you have an idea, put a comment down below on what do you think I should do, rebuild this motor or put in something better. Alright, so next up we need to remove the 3 bolts that hold the torque converter to that flywheel there. So the best way to describe this, now there's a plastic plate that covers that, but I removed that in that very first video, and I'll put a link up somewhere here to watch that first video on the Firebird. But essentially you're just going to pull those 3 bolts, rotate the engine, and get to each one of those bolts and pull them out. A little shot here of what we're doing, and it's not really that hard. Now my transmission, I was able just to move by hand. So I've seen other people where they have actually had to bump it with the starter. I'm not sure if that's a sign that this Turbo 350 is on its way out, or if that's pretty normal. If you guys know the answer to that, also drop me down a comment. I'd be interested to know if that's something I need to address while this thing's out real quick here. And we'll just go ahead and get the next one lined up here and get in there. It's a tight fit, and I had to use two wrenches. I thought about using a socket, but there's just not enough room to get a socket up in there to move this around. So basically, just put the two wrenches on and just kind of hammer down on one side to kind of break it loose. It's not on there very tight at all, so it should be quick and easy to get those three bolts off if you guys are doing this to your Camaro or Firebird or other Chevy car. Hey guys, just take a moment if you would. If you like the channel and you want to support us a little bit on this Firebird build, do me a favor. Would you hit that link below and get yourself one of these cool t-shirts? Pretty cool. It has the wrench and the Pontiac logo. I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and maybe buy a shirt for yourself or for your wife or for anyone else. So button down below, there's a link to get yourself a t-shirt. All right guys, back to the pulling the motor out. All right, next guys, we need to remove the shift linkage from the car. At first, I pulled just the pin out from there, but the back side of it is actually clamped to the oil pan. You can kind of see those half-inch bolts right there. So do yourself a favor and just go ahead and remove that entire bracket that's bolted to the underside of a Turbo 350 automatic transmission if you're working on one of those. And while you're down there, take a look around for any ground straps or ground wires that have that are tied to the chassis of the car, to the block and the motor. I did find two of those when I was pulling mine out. So make sure you grab those and undo those real quick. So next, I was going to just remove the where the pipes come out of the exhaust manifolds down below, but the angle to get in there to remove those was just a little too difficult. So I thought I'll just go ahead and pull the exhaust manifolds off the block itself, and then pull the motor out, and then later on I can remove those completely. So it took a little bit of time here and just walked around and made sure I pulled off all those. And when you do that, be prepared because the gaskets, the exhaust gaskets, will fall down and out of the floor, and just kick those aside because you're going to replace those anyways. All right, up next, go ahead and disconnect the fuel lines from the car. There's usually a hard line that comes from the tank up to the front, and then a rubber line will take it over to the fuel pump and then up to the carburetor there. So go ahead and just take a minute, usually it's a hose clamp, and undo it and be done with it. And then just make sure to disconnect the fuel line from the carb that goes down to that other line right there. Now on mine, there was a metal tube that ran back behind that alternator, so a rubber hose that we just took off earlier, and then this rubber hose here at the carburetor. Go ahead and pull that off and move that out of the way. That way there's no fuel anywhere to cause you any grief or fires. I mean, I know it's hot in Phoenix, but don't need it any hotter than that. Sheesh. Now on my 67 Firebird, it originally was an inline 6, so its throttle cable is a throttle rod. There's an actual rod that comes out of the firewall that connects to the carburetor. I may switch that up when I reinstall the motor. You know, may have to redo it if it's a different motor, or if there's a better design or a better way to hook up the throttle linkage from a inline 6 Firebird to a V8. Drop me a comment, let me know if you have an idea or suggestion. But obviously you got to disconnect this from the carburetor before you can pull that motor out. Now things are starting to get exciting. Go ahead and time to remove that carburetor. So there should be 4 bolts bolting the carb down to the intake manifold. Go ahead and pull those off. And then we will put on our plate. And guys, this motor pulling plate that I found, it's on Amazon, and I'll put a link down below in case you want to get one yourself. It was like 20, 25 bucks tops, and I've used it on this motor. I've used it on my neighbor's, has a 57 or 56 Ford Thunderbird, and we've used it to pull his motor out as well. So get one of these plates, hang it up. You'll use it 2 or 3 times, I'm sure. Next, just go around and remove any hoses that you can find. I removed both the water hoses, the one on the intake up there, one on the water pump, and I also removed the hose that went from the heater core to the front of the motor there. So just take a moment, walk around, look for anything that you can detach now, get it out of the way before you go to pull this motor, just to make life a tad bit easier for you. All right, we are getting really close. Next, go ahead and remove the power steering reservoir and pump, and disconnect the lines from the actual box itself. I didn't have any line wrenches that matched up correctly, so I just had to go ahead and use a regular box end wrench. But if you have line wrenches, I prefer to use those. But in this case, I just had to use what I had to use. So detach those two, and then unbolt the power steering pump from the front of the motor right there, and we'll have this out of the way here in no time. Okay, so next we're going to go ahead and pull that drive line. Go to the back of the car where the drive line connects up to the rear differential right there. And basically there's two half-inch nuts that hold on these little U brackets that hold the U joint together, the shaft to the back of the pumpkin there. Just take your time and take a screwdriver, kind of shove it in there to kind of give yourself some leverage to pull those off. But they were not on there too tight. I was a little concerned those weren't tight enough, but they did come off with just a little bit of penetrating oil right there, and I was able to get those done and off in no time flat. So next, to actually pull the line, I took just a small step stool to kind of give me a little bit of leverage here. Take a crowbar and just pull back on that drive line, and you'll see right here it kind of just gives way, and set her down right there. The drive line is really not that heavy. Then go to the front and just pull it out of the yoke on the back end of that transmission, and you have a drive line that's out. So I was getting ready to go ahead and pull the motor mounts to pull the motor when I realized that the fuel pump kind of blocks the mount over there on that passenger side. So go ahead and take a 13 millimeter, and we'll just go ahead and pull out the two bolts that attach the fuel pump to the side of the block. And unfortunately for me, that pin did not fall out. It actually kind of dropped down inside the block. So eventually I'm going to have to pull that pin out and put it with the bolts for the fuel pump when we go to put it back together. Oh man, we're getting so close. It's time to pull those motor mounts. You're going to have to get a wrench on the back side and just zip them right off. And now here's the side that had the fuel pump. I'll get in there and zip those off as well. And then you can just push those bolts right on out. Done. Now is the time to pull the motor. So get yourself a cherry picker, as they're called. Get the chain on that back hole of the plate, and just start slowly jacking it up. Take a moment, look around, make sure you have everything disconnected, double check. And one thing I did not show you, but there was no bolt holding on a transmission mount. That bolt was gone, so at some point in time it had disappeared. So that'd be the one thing that I did not show you, but you will need to disconnect that transmission mount. And then slowly you're just going to start working it. Now if you have a friend or a buddy or a neighbor, it would be awesome to have them come over and help you if they have time. But obviously, as a single person, you could totally pull the motor out of your classic car. Now the wife did come out to give me a set of eyes, and of course she did notice something. Yeah, pointed out. And yeah, I forgot to fully disconnect the shift linkage. Like I said earlier in the video, I forgot. So took care of that, and then as you'll see, we jacked it up. She just double checking everything was clear, and then out she comes.
Hang on anything?
Well guys, the engine is out. Check it out. Now it's going to get kind of bright because we are in Phoenix, Arizona. But she is out. Good look here. So yeah, this is a Chevy 350, and I'll be doing the numbers on it to find out exactly what it was in before it found its way into the Firebird. And oh, so never had a Speedo. I wonder why, because someone clipped it. So pretty fun stuff there. Coolness. Well, it is out, and lots more to do. Still need to figure out for my AC unit if I'm going to keep that or go with a new modern one. All right, guys, this is going to wrap up this Firebird video this week. We have the motor out. Next week, we're going to start tearing down the 350, detach it from the Turbo 350 transmission, and then we'll get to work on redoing the subframe, new suspension, painting it, getting it all put back together so that way in time. But that's done. Engine should be done, and we can put it back in and start this process. So until next week, guys, thank you so much. And if you've enjoyed the video, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, drop me a comment if you would, and we'll see you next Friday.